Welcome to Decentralized News, where you can get all your Bitcoin and crypto updates in about a half an hour. This is not financial advice. Please do your own research. I'm joined as always by Ozzy. How you doing up there today? You got daylight savings going on?
Yeah, daylight's messing with the brain a little bit, making this feel a little bit earlier in the day than it is. And we've got a ton of big news today, and including MasterCard, Bitcoin all-time high, ETH getting close to its all-time high, ETF news, MicroStrategy, and a whole bunch of news and notes. So I'm pretty excited to get into it.
Let's start with that breaking news. We have a report from CoinDesk. They have seen promotional materials and that they're testing a platform of a partnership between MasterCard and MetaMask. And this is with the big story being you're going to be able to use crypto for everyday purchases. So they're testing, MetaMask is testing an entirely on-chain MasterCard branded payment card. It would be the first ever, quote unquote, first ever truly decentralized Web3 payment solution, allowing users to spend their crypto on everyday purchases everywhere cards are accepted. So that's pretty exciting. Such a product would unite the two giants. MetaMask is the biggest self-custody wallet with over 30 million monthly active users, and MasterCard, obviously, traditional credit and debit card services. But to be fair, before we dive into too much, MetaMask developer Consensus did not immediately reach to CoinDesk about this, and MasterCard just pointed to a previous statement back from October about this article, but they did respond. But they said, and this quote goes like as such: MasterCard is bringing its trusted and transparent approach to digital asset space through a range of innovative products and solutions, including multi-token network, crypto credentials, CBDC partner program, and new card programs to connect Web 2 and Web 3. I think that applies to the last one there. But exciting stuff.
Very exciting. It doesn't surprise me too much to see this kind of news. Really, MasterCard has been trying to break in and access that crypto liquidity in some way for, I would like to say, at least 4 years. If we think back to the previous bull market, and I think the comment about the first fully decentralized Web3 payment solution would be true, because if you think about all of the other crypto cards, they've either been, with an exchange or with a little bit more of a kind of centralized figure. You had to have it in some kind of account, whereas you hold your own keys. In most of those previous solutions, you did not hold your own keys. So this is a pretty interesting breakthrough. And I know for people that are ETH millionaires, or potentially it's mainly ETH millionaires that you got to think about, this does provide them a way to pay for things essentially tax-free means, because they can use that ETH to pay without ever having to take capital gains on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the tax implication, but because anytime like you do any kind of transaction, that's like selling your ETH. I wonder how that will play out. That's an interesting point. But what I notice is when I'm talking to people asking about the space, curious about the space, or if they're like, what the heck is Bitcoin, or what the heck is this stuff? They're like, can you buy anything with it? Like, what can you do with it? That's always one of the first questions when you're talking about new adoption and people getting their head around what is this technology. So to be able to point to something that says we can spend it right here, that might be a nice roadblock removed.
Oh, I think absolutely. It's a massive roadblock removed. I was telling you off screen that I was talking to my dad, and one of the things that we were talking about was airdrops, which I'm a big fan of. I know there's not a lot of guides out. I just don't think there's a ton of quality opportunities out there. But he was like, I told him I'd made about $10,000 worth on airdrops this year, not heavily farming any of them. And he was like, and do you have that money? Can you use that money? And I'm like, yeah, I have that. I can use it. Some of it I'm still holding in the tokens that I had airdropped. Some of it I sold. But yeah, I can totally access it. And that's one of the big things is it's always about, can you get it back to something that can be used for a means of exchange? It's
not necessarily about getting it back to cash that you're going to use. It's like, can you just use it as it is? Yeah. Exciting stuff. Let's move on here. The other big story, Bitcoin all-time high. We're sitting at 72,000. ETH broke 4K.
Yeah, we're at 72,400 right now. It's hit 72,600 on some charts. So that's pretty major.
Price discovery mode. I know we were talking about, I was flirting with kind of 68, 69, 70, and then dropping down. Coinbase shutting down the last couple of weeks, it seemed imminent that it was going to break through. But today feels like a little bit of a breakthrough moment. I haven't heard anything about Coinbase shutting down yet.
No, I've been checking Coinbase fairly regularly just to see if that would potentially happen today, and it hasn't. I haven't run into any issues right now. And yeah, this is like the first day where we're actually sustainably and holding above the 69K mark, which is nuts to think about, because we are still a month and a week essentially from the halving. And so that's incredible, really. I think that
uncharted territories in that, one, yes, we're in price discovery mode, but two, we hit that level before the halving. Now, a lot of people are still saying there could be a pullback, but we're above 70 and holding. We'll see how this week plays out.
Absolutely. I'm very interested to see how this week plays out, with especially considering the fact that we've got MicroStrategy that's added another 12,000 Bitcoin at an $821 million dollars. So that's their second largest purchase that they've ever made. And according to the SEC, the tokens were bought between February 26th and March 10th. Up until Sunday was the last purchase, and their average price was just below the all-time high, which is $68,477. So that brings their average price for their total holdings to about $33.7 thousand. They're up at least a 2x on most of their Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, I know the ETFs have been the other big driving factor, but I love seeing Michael Saylor get a hold of some, because he's just an absolute psychopath of a holder. I love it. It's better than ETF as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, his will definitely not go anywhere. It
feels like it.
Yeah, at least the way he speaks. That being said, looking at the ETFs, I don't think we can not talk about the ETFs when talking about the all-time high. The BlackRock ETF is nearing 200,000 Bitcoin holdings, which is passing MicroStrategy's total holdings, which is absolutely crazy to think about. That is a massive kind of door opening, and essentially 200,000 Bitcoin that has left the supply. It obviously could return. People can still sell the ETFs, but it is showing a massive amount of buying in the market. And we're seeing that massive supply shock with Bitcoin right now. The supply and demand curve is really proving its case right now in Bitcoin price action.
Seems like overall there are more buys than sells coming in, but it does make me wonder, when are people going to take profits out of this? Do they look at it like a long-term hold in these ETFs, or is it like, I'm going to flip this and make some money, reallocate? Like, let's say, for example, like when the ETH ETF launches, let's say that does happen, or a basket launches. Do people take profits out and then move it into something like that? I wonder how that'll affect. Like, when do the sales come from this?
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what happens. I think on this coming Saturday, I'm joining Grant and Jarrett from Not Crypto Bros, and we're going to be talking about what our price predictions are and a little bit about what our opinions are on how we might see the market change with ETFs. And I think that is definitely a question that I've got, is how do the ETFs change the market, especially considering the front running that we're seeing right now. We're hitting all-time high pre-halving. Alts, especially low cap alts, are performing better overall than they have in previous cycles, especially when you look at mid caps are underperforming, but low caps are overperforming for this time in the cycle. And so we're seeing a little bit of a change, and I wonder how much more will change, and maybe when do we see those ETF sales, and does that more factor into how the Bitcoin cycle changes?
Do you think it's that if you want to play it safe, you go into ETFs, and if you want to take your chances, you're obviously have a higher risk tolerance, so why are you going to go into a mid cap when you can go into something with way more upside?
I think that's part of it.
There's like a basin, like a barren land in between with these mid caps.
I think right now the mid caps are definitely being ignored more than they should, because I think you get to a point where those low caps just can't rise anymore unless the mid caps rise, because they're like they essentially become a mid cap. So you will have to see that move. But yes, I think a lot of more people understand the cycle. Like 2021 brought in the most people into the crypto market that we've ever had. And so more likely than not, a greater number of people stuck around from 2021 to now compared to 2017 to 2021. So these people now know, hey, this market's around. We can see how this cycle works, and they figured, why not go for the low caps? Maybe they got wrecked by FTX, and they're like, why go for the low caps? I want to make my money back. Let's get into those low caps and kill it, essentially.
Yeah, like you said, it'd be interesting to see how it plays out. The other changing dynamic is with money inside the ETFs, does that make it harder for crypto and altcoins to grow, in that before maybe it was easier for that liquidity or gains from Bitcoin to flow into altcoins because you were already in that ecosystem, whereas now, because it's on this highly regulated space, it's either you cash out just for cash or you stay in.
I don't necessarily think that we're going to see the alts struggle as much. I just think that we might see Bitcoin perform better than it has, like matched last cycle's performance, because what I do think is most of retail will probably go buying Bitcoin. They know about the ETFs and everything, but you can't day trade. Like, a lot of them are going to see it as for quick cash. And so you're not going to want to day trade in your 401k. Like, you can't day trade in your 401k. You can't really do that within your Roth IRA. And so you're better off just buying your regular buying Bitcoin on Robinhood or wherever else you're buying maybe your non-registered accounts and doing it that way. And so you'll still see that capital come into, and if not from new retail, you've still got all of the users that are around from the previous cycle that are like, hey, I've made some money on Bitcoin, because there's still tons of native holders of Bitcoin who go take their profits and go cycle that into all of the alts, whether it's through selling their Bitcoin or lending and borrowing against their Bitcoin.
That's not the only ETF news. The U.S. has taken center stage by being the first, or not the first to offer, but to have such a huge success. They've made a big splash on the rest of the world. Those that don't have their ETFs on market are maybe feeling a little pressure. We have a story out of the UK and out of Hong Kong. The one out of Hong Kong is even more interesting because it talks about ETH a little bit. But so the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, they're tasked with regulating these types of products, said it will not object of exchanges forming a UK listed market segment for crypto assets. They call them CETNS. And apparently it's going to be for institutional investors only at first. It won't be available for retail investors, which I thought was an interesting little note. God bless America.
Yeah, very interesting note. I don't understand this. Like, it feels, I know a lot of our fellow OC members that are in the UK are crying a little bit because they are feeling pretty restricted in the UK in terms of their access. And so this is just even worse, I think, in terms of the UK not offering this to other people, like to regular investors. Sure, maybe make them take some evaluation questions. Can you, like, understand, do you know your risk? Like, when we go to the bank here in Canada, you got to take general knowledge questions. But other than that, I don't think you need to be blocking out retail. I think blocking out retail is the total opposite of what you should be doing. But Hong Kong is interesting. Hong Kong wants to launch their spot Ethereum ETFs before the US, with 10 firms unveiling their Bitcoin ETF plans. They're all being processed right now, including Harvest Finance, which is planning to launch their Bitcoin spot ETF in Hong Kong. They're calling for fast action on the ETF approvals, because especially the Ethereum ETFs, according to local media, because they want to front run the US ETFs for the global market. The SEC has delayed the BlackRock and Fidelity spot ETH ETFs just recently, and right now we are facing a late May 23rd is kind of Groundhog Day in terms of the ETH ETFs in the US. Hong Kong trying to beat that date. It's only a couple months away, but definitely seem to be trying to beat the US at this game.
Exciting times for ETH holders, I think. There's other reasons to get excited if you're holding ETH or buying ETH, but all signs seem to point to this thing getting delayed to the max by the SEC. So it's a little bit speculative. It's like the industry wants it to launch. So we'll see I have no feel for their regulation authority, but yeah, exciting reports. But the other thing going on with Ethereum is their Dencun upgrade. So this is going to happen. We're posting this tomorrow, so it'll be the day after. So this is happening this week in a couple of days from recording. It's set to ship on March 13th and is one of the most anticipated hard forks. It's probably the most anticipated hard fork since the merge. It's expected to significantly reduce transaction fees on layer 2 networks and enhance Ethereum's overall scalability. The upgrade's name, Dencun, combines the Cancun upgrade and the Deneb upgrade. But basically, a key feature of the upgrade is the introduction of proto-dank sharding, and this development aims to reduce layer 2 transaction fees. So yeah, if you're looking for a break in fees on the layer 1 on the main net, it's probably not happening. But for these layer 2s, they might be the big winners in this.
Yeah, I would say this couldn't come sooner for L2s. I'm airdrop farming 2-3 major L2s right now, and the gas fees have gotten atrocious. We're talking like $5, at least in my mind, atrocious. We're looking at like $5 to $10. At one point, I saw a spike up to $20 for just to conduct a swap, and that was pretty nuts in my mind. I think part of this has to do with all of the excitement regarding ETH and everyone starting to use ETH again with the kind of semi-return of the bull run. But I'm really hoping that Dencun, which is said to potentially reduce fees by up to 90% on certain types of roll-ups, will be pretty well anticipated and pretty well received. I'm hoping to get back at least my $1 swaps rather than my $5 swaps if I can.
Yeah, 90% is statistically significant. So that
Absolutely.
would be a big deal if they're able to succeed in that. Yeah, so we'll see. Exciting times. Maybe a sell the news event, who knows? But hopefully it just, in reality, the fees come down. I think that's what we all really want to see.
Yeah, I think everyone just wants the fees to come down. I think what it will hopefully do, and what I'm really hoping to see, is that we start seeing just tokens launching natively on L2s or other places, and rather than launching on ETH first, because launching on ETH first is becoming, if you are a small fish, paying $100 for swaps isn't sustainable, but at the same time,
it'll keep you a small fish.
It'll keep you a small fish, and the reality is that you can't, like, Dencun won't change that, but hopefully it will make the L2s just that much more interesting for all of the projects looking to launch on the Ethereum EVM ecosystem. Looking at kind of some of the top L2s, IMX, Big Gaming was my number one, or my pick for the large cap gaming token for this cycle. Go check out my video on that if you want to see that. Optimism's number 2. It's supposed to be very beneficial for optimistic rollups, which is what Optimism is. Mantle is the next largest market cap, and then you got Arbitrum and Starknet. These are all in the top 70, with Mutable X being in the top 30 and alongside Optimism, and then the others being in the top 70. So pretty interesting to see. Very excited to see what happens with L2 fees, especially for ZK Sync and Scroll. Anyone who's farming with me, it would be very welcome.
Yeah, there was one not mentioned on here that kind of surprised us both. Was Matic wasn't on this list. Now this is just some layer 2s on CoinMarketCap, a generic list. And Matic's been getting some complaints as one of those, I don't know, I guess you call it mid-cap, but underperforming the market. There's seems to like there should be more excitement than there is, but maybe this will help with the gas fees over there too.
They're launching their ag layer, which is all part of their big pool migration. And so I do think that there's going to be some great price action coming. They're being slow and steady. They've broken the dollar mark, which was always a big sticking point for Matic. So I'm optimistic that Matic will continue to perform and start really outshining as we see more news regarding their upgrades and their move to being a true layer 2 and layer 2 competitor to Optimism. One thing that is interesting, unrelated to L2s, is Trump. We don't love talking politics on this channel, but we've seen a very interesting kind of shift in Trump rhetoric and discussion. And with the US election being this fall, there's some pretty big implications of this change in rhetoric. He was just interviewed on Squawk Box, and one of the major things that he said is that he called Bitcoin an additional form of currency, which was done, he said, in a CNBC appearance, and that there has been a lot of use of Bitcoin, and I'm not sure I would want to take that away at this point. So
yeah, I think these are actually older quotes from his other most recent talks on it, or comments on just Bitcoin in general. And he was pretty harsh earlier. So there was a lot of skepticism about whether Trump is going to be pro crypto, but his stance seems to be softening. I listened to a little bit of it. He said something about he has accepted Bitcoin as like a payment. He was asked directly, do you own Bitcoin? He said, no. But he just seemed, overall, the comments were seen as a softening of his stance on it. He still seems to always want to keep the dollar dominant and prominent. But yeah, and then he talked a little bit about his NFT collections and just seeing how the Republicans in general have been a little bit more pro crypto. It's always interesting to follow along with what he's saying, just because there is a decent shot he is the next president of the United States. So what his stance on it is always interesting. But there's a perception that it is softening and could change even more.
Yeah, I think that's super important. He said that he's accepted payments. He said he's used it. He also mentioned, he talked about his NFT collection, and he has mentioned, he didn't talk a ton about ETH, although he has mentioned that he has used it regarding his NFT collection.
It's on that chain. So.
And then he's got ordinals too. So he's got both. So I think he and his comments were, for the most part, at least that I've seen, they seem to understand the technology. It wasn't a completely oblivious commentary regarding Bitcoin and Ethereum and crypto technology that we sometimes see from kind of other members of the House and of the US government. So this is interesting just to see. He obviously at least has someone smart on his team educating him about it, if he's not already developed an interest himself. So this softening is a pretty interesting catalyst potentially for crypto and for Bitcoin heading into 2024 and 2025.
I think if you're a single issue voter, it's hard to ignore him. And then even if you're wishy-washy in the middle, the fact that he's not completely against it but still wants to keep the dollar strong and prominent, that seems a little bit more favorable if you're leaning into it a little bit than just like the full-on anti-crypto army, like send it overseas.
Absolutely. And talking about the US dollar and the US kind of economy, let's look at the macro for this week. Again, we're going to be pretty quick. US unemployment numbers were higher than expected on Friday, and hourly wages also rose less than expected. Weak job numbers, which, if you're looking for rate cuts, somewhat of a good sign. We've got CPI and PPI this week, so we're definitely watching to see what those are. They're coming out on Tuesday and Wednesday, and looking at expectations right now, we're looking at potential rise in CPI, but a drop in core, and core is what we're really looking to see drop. Hopefully we're seeing a stronger drop in core. Right now it's at 0.4 month over month. We're hoping for at least a 0.3, which would bring it to about a 3.7 year over year growth in core CPI. So fingers crossed we see that. But
what happened? Did Canada have a rate cut vision? The FOMAC next week, we have our Fed meeting next week. So these numbers could affect kind of the expectations. Just expected no change. But what did Canada do?
Canada decided to hold their rates this week, or they made the decision to hold their rates last week. Generally, the Bank of Canada has front-run U.S. decisions. So we did our major increases earlier. We stalled earlier, and then we're expected to start cutting sooner for the most part this cycle. And they also made a statement that they don't have any reason, at least right now, that would indicate a need to cut. When we look at the kind of expectations for the US for this FOMC and kind of the next 3-4 meetings, we've got a 97% expectation of no change next week. We've got an 80% expectation of no change in May. And then June, we're starting to see 70% expectation of a cut. And then July, it's a 90% expectation of at least one cut. So we'll see what these CPI numbers say. I'm interested to see the fact that the US is still, that Canada is still holding their rates and not really showing an indication they want to cut. Makes me feel like we maybe don't see an indication of cutting for at least another few months in the US as well.
That's been the theme with macro, steady as it goes. The only thing that might change it may be some surprising numbers this week from CPI and PPI. But it's hard to imagine that they're going down faster than expected. If anything, it seems like the pressure will be on the other side. But we'll see. The unemployment being worse than expected. So then CPI comes in better than expected. Maybe a little pressure to cut sooner. But yeah, it's looking like summer before we see anything happen.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us to some news and notes. I think the first thing that we should definitely hit on is, I talked about gaming tokens on Friday. Go check out that video. But AI coins have been blowing up. NVIDIA's AI conference is next week from the 19th to the 21st, and the Near and Render CEO will be presenting there. Big kind of note, Near actually has nothing to do with AI, but their CEO played a part in the early development of AI, and so Near has been getting a nice pump because of that. Render has as well, so interesting to see that. But I've seen tons of AI tokens been running like crazy.
Seems like there's a lot of launch too. A lot of AI coins launch.
Absolutely. GPU compute type projects are just about everywhere right now. And
I saw one blur was like io.net, and that was just one of many. There's so many just launching.
I think I've seen 5 or 6 of people have like either DM'd me or posted in a couple of private groups I'm in saying, hey, have you seen this? And I'm like, yeah, this is an exact copy of this project and that project that are both very large market cap, mainly of Render and Akash, which I'm both very bullish on. But
even if you're bullish on those, they're getting a lot of competition now. Like success brings competition.
Exactly. We've got the Entangled token, which is launching on March 13th. That seems to be pretty highly anticipated, so watch that. Phantom is now supporting Bitcoin ordinals, so we're starting to see the wallet wars a little bit, and some of the Solana kind of ecosystem really starting to try to take on the full breadth of tokens, with Magic Eden integrating ETH and Polygon compatibility, and Phantom also having ETH and Matic compatibility, but also now adding ordinals. Magic Eden also has ordinal support, I'm pretty sure. So we're seeing some big competition towards OpenSea and some of the original EVM builders.
We also have some other news and notes with WIF. Meme coin season is well upon us. They, just as a sign of how high it's getting, they're trying to raise funds to be on the Las Vegas Sphere, which is that big giant billboard in Vegas. I don't know if you've seen it.
I personally haven't, but I've heard of it. So
there's some cool images. I guess there's a theater inside it too. But anyway, they're trying to get one of the more, there's the New York Times billboard, and then there's a Las Vegas Sphere billboard. Those are the big ones.
Yeah, talking about L2s, we're seeing yield-bearing L2 wars. Mantle is now being the highest yielding for liquid staking ETH at 7.2%, with their METH product, which is competing against Manta and Blast, are its two main competitors in that space. So interesting to see that. Looking at interoperability, Injective has officially released in EVM, which is the first EVM capable of achieving true composability across Cosmos and Solana. So really talking about interchain interoperability there. Telegram, you want to hit us with that?
Yeah, they announced that they're going to share ad revenue with users with payments settled on the Ton blockchain. So a big use case for them. Ad revenue is supposed to begin in March. Not sure how the logistics of how all that's supposed to work, but exciting news. Revenue share. We've been talking about that a little bit lately on the show. People trying to find new ways to share their revenue with the blockchain.
Absolutely. And then I guess our last two big stories for this week, there's a $2.4 billion unlock with Arbitrum. So that's coming on Friday. Pretty big unlock. It's probably one of the biggest token unlocks of 2024. We'll see what that does for price. I'm very interested. Maybe it's already suppressing the price. Worth keeping an eye on. That's a lot of tokens to be coming on into circulation.
There's a lot of tokens.
Aptos has about $327 million worth of Aptos token coming unlocked on March 13th. A much smaller unlock, but one of the regular ones that is ongoing with Aptos. To give you an idea about ARB currently has a market cap of $2.6 billion. So essentially you are doubling the supply of Arbitrum that is in circulation when the supply unlocks. So that's a pretty major unlock for Arbitrum. Worth keeping an eye on with that.
But like you said, maybe it's already served. A lot of things have been running, and Arbitrum has been muted. So
yeah, considering like Mantle has lower TVL than Arbitrum, and Optimism is like I would say is a fair competitor. Optimism currently has almost double the market cap of Arbitrum. So once you bring these tokens into circulation, they'd essentially be close to one another. Optimism being 4.5 billion and Arbitrum being 2 points, that would be around 5. So you might see minor price correction, but would put it, I think, more in line with Optimism and where it should be, at least based on TVL and total transactions. Very well could be priced in. That being said, I want to thank every one of you for tuning in. We have hit 285 subscribers. We're really thankful for every one of you. Please remember, this is really content for educational and entertainment purposes. We're not financial advisors. Please do your own research, but like and subscribe. Share it with a friend. Drop us a comment. Tell us what you think about whether ARB is their unlocks priced in, or do you think it's going to drop further? And tell me whether you think Dencun will really make a difference for you on L2s. That being said, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.